Well, hello again, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good everything to wherever you are in the world. And welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. From us here, Morna and myself in Africa. And today I have the pleasure of introducing to you all a very, very special soul. He calls himself my brother.
How lucky.
Yeah, you are, right? Say yes, say yes, say yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Oh, welcome. This is my brother, Alan.
Thank you.
And I am so excited to introduce you guys to him. He's absolutely amazing. He's a visual artist who now lives in the Margaret River, right? Yes. Margaret River region in Australia. Has done some amazing artworks in his life. He has lived in the Middle East where he's done these massive bronzes and statues and sculptures. He is currently in Australia where he is doing something really special where he pretty much does, I want to say art recycling, but it's not that. It's a lot more than that. He does incredible work. But
Shanti,
before we...
you could call it component recycling.
I love it, component recycling. And any of you who follow me on Facebook and on Instagram and stuff, I'm often sharing his stuff. Really talented. And every single thing he does has a meaning. It has a purpose. You're an amazing conservationist. You're an amazing lover of this planet. And I just love what you do and how you've done it. But before we get there, I want to go right back to the beginning. As I do with all our guests, I'm just going to pretend I don't know you for now. So I would like to know from you, Alan, this little Karoo farm boy, I mean, guys and girls, we are 6 in the family, okay? I'm daughter number 4. We were 4 girls and then 2 boys. So I'm the youngest girl, and then he's the baby brother and the youngest in the family. You can imagine he was spoiled rotten. We adored him. He was the cutest little thing. He used to trot around all over the place with a little frown on his face. He never spoke to anyone. If you shouted or called at him, he wouldn't even answer you. You know, he'd be sitting in the room next door. And you know what it's like when you've got a big family, all calling and shouting to each other. This one would ignore everyone flat. But really, you are a beautiful soul inside and out. And I am so privileged to have you on our channel today to introduce you to our audience and to tell us more about how it began for you, because you always were such an artistic little thing. As kids, you used to make us these little clay animals. And then I remember you went on to that hard clay stuff and and it went from there. So enough babbling from me. Over to you.
Thank you, Shanti. I started off, my earliest memory is our cousins would come down to the farm from the city, and it was a big, exciting thing. It was actually my mum's cousin, but all her kids we were closer to them than a lot of our closer cousins. But we had a lot of fun with them on the farm. And I do remember them, I would say, pestering me to make them little animals out of clay. We'd go down to the river, find some clay in the riverbank, and then bring it back and then start making stuff. And I remember making crocodiles and hippos and pigs, and I loved pigs as a little kid. So that sort of thing. And then we'd fire them in what you call a donkey oven, which is basically a water heating system. But it sits alongside the outside of the building, and we'd open that up, and there'd be coals inside there, and then we'd basically, I suppose, you're really drying out the clay, and then they'd very carefully take these back to the city with them. And that's my earliest memory of being creative. And my mother says I was quite good at about 3. So I've been going for half a century, I suppose you could say.
What inspired you? if you can think
Oh,
about those days to what, I mean, I remember you making lots of little animals and things. What actually inspired you? And I remember you love pigs. Yes, absolutely.
yeah. I loved the farm. I just loved the farm life. I loved outdoors. I loved just nature. And I suppose, as you say, I was probably quiet. I was a bit of a sulky kid. I remember getting screamed at for sulking and for ignoring people. And I just shut down. You know, if you gave me trouble, I just shut down and you get nothing out of me. So I do remember that. Stubborn as a pig, you could say. But yeah, I really enjoyed the farm. I enjoyed having fun. I had my little friends, and you know, obviously our farm was the way things worked back then. Obviously, at height of apartheid, you had a farmer and he had laborers, and they worked for the farmer for next to nothing. You know, unfortunately back then that's how it worked. That's what they did, and their children were my friends. We were buddies. And we used to go and do all sorts together. I mean, we nearly burnt down the barn one day, and that was a lot of trouble. So we all got hauled over a 44-gallon drum and got smashed, got beaten by the old man for starting a fire. But we did lots of stuff together. We had lots of fun. So my inspiration really came from exactly the same thing that it is now, and that's nature. That's not only nature in its truest form, but also, you know, farm animals and the farm and the system of the farm as well just inspired me. I just love living sustainably as well. So it's you know, I'm certainly not entirely hands-off when it comes to being a conservationist. I'm a realist. I think I believe in sustainable use of the land and of what we have. And if we all lived sustainably, you know, we could all be, I think, a lot happier and a lot less greedy, but still have enough. But yeah, that's a long road that we all have to travel. I think
Absolutely.
urbanization has caused a break between love of nature for most of humanity, and that disconnect between what we have as I suppose our origin and what we have now is so different, and even just it's just amazing how quickly it's changed, and it's changing even faster. So
absolutely.
We have to hold on to the truth, really, in my opinion. So so I think that's my inspiration. It's just and my latest comment, if you ask me what makes me tick as a visual artist, is I'm inspired by nature, but I'm energized by people. So I love both. I love commissions. I love working on commissions. I love pleasing people. So if I have a client, they don't even have to say anything. I can just see on their face if they like what I've done for them. And I always have a caveat when I produce a project for a client, a commission. I say, I want you to be happy. If you're not happy, then we have to start. If we have to start it from scratch, we do. But I want you to be happy with what I do for you. And that seems to work really well. And communication along the way, and providing images if they want to see them. Some don't want to see anything. They just want to see the final product. Some love the process. Most of them do.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to your question, Shanti, is that I just love the combination of nature, living sustainably, and people. It's quite broad, really. I'm not at all driven by commerce, by money. I could go and live in a little country on a piece of land, and if I had people visiting daily, that would be even better for me, you know. So, and that's what I'm striving to do now. So, yeah, I'm enjoying my life right now. I'm kind of where I need to be, creatively, connection-wise. I live in a beautiful part of the world. It's in the southwestern corner of Australia. So it's where the two oceans, the Southern Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet. Indian Ocean, I can't remember now. It's Indian, I think. Yes, it's Indian. Because I look over to Africa every day. I go, hey, mum, hey, dad, hey, sisters. So yeah, me looking west is looking at the east coast of Africa, of course. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful place to live. People are, I say the people punch well above their weight class, because people that live in Margaret River are quite formidable in terms of their being aware of everything. They're great community people. They're sophisticated. They're intelligent, and it's only a tiny, really 10,000 people community. And there's just so much that they've got to offer. There's literally everything you could imagine. There's wineries, there's caves, there's beautiful coastline, there's forests, you know, the big eucalyptus forests. There's and then a myriad of activities involved in that. You know, mountain biking, surfing. It's very well known for its surf, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you really
yes.
Yeah, you really do draw a lot of inspiration from that, I think, and you always have. So I want to backtrack a little bit, and let's just go back to, you know, when you were a little kid and you were making these things and doing whatever it is you were doing and making gifts and what have you. How did it transpire from that hobby, creative, just doing it because you have a passion? And how did it turn into what it is now? Because we're going to put some of your pictures up, because you've really, over the years, created some beautiful, beautiful artwork. You know, your bronze sculptures. I remember when I was in Dubai, bringing back 2 of your horses' heads that you had made. Wow. I mean, it is, I mean, the family I was staying with, they just could not believe that you had made this. I mean, I was like, this is my little brother, you know, but it's just really beautiful. You know, the detail you put into everything, the creativity with which you do things, you know, and you've always had the sustainability. I know that. So just from that perspective, how did it grow for you and to get to where you are now?
I think that being quite melancholic probably was I suppose good for me to be able to spend time on my own, you know, being either in boarding school or on the farm. Once you guys were all in boarding school, I was the youngest kid there, so I had to entertain myself a lot, and I did a lot of that sort of thing. I found stuff to do, and a lot of, I became quite creative, and it's weird. I wouldn't want to parallel myself with Leonardo da Vinci, but basically that's exactly what happened to him. He got left alone because he was born to a subclass mother. He wasn't allowed to go to school, so he had to keep himself entertained, and he literally learned from nature. And it's weird how similar my path was from that point of view. Was just going out and learning from looking at how birds fly, looking at how snakes move, you know, just enjoying nature the way it is, and then forming that into, you know, just, I didn't know anything different. When I made a piece of artwork, it was inevitably an animal. So one of my first interesting discoveries, and I love discovering, so you mentioned something in those lines earlier, my processes, I find, are always question current processes. And one of my processes was we had a sheep farm, and on the tables of these sorting tables in Dad's shearing shed was a layer of this grease that would form. So it's basically fine sand, and the oil from the lanolin from the wool would collect on the surface of the steel. They're like broomstick style rods that made up the table, and we'd go there with a mower blade, which basically was used for cutting the lucerne. You take one of those triangular shaped blades and just scrape off that soft stuff off the top. And I made a lot of animals from that. And that, obviously, if you know anything about the oil from a sheep's wool, it's really good for your skin. So I probably got a treatment every day when I was doing it. I remember making seals and buffalo and things like that from that as well. So once again, back into animals, and then come forward a little bit more, go to school.
I'm very interested. How did you know to use that stuff?
I don't remember. I don't know how that came about. Someone must have suggested it to me. Maybe
I remember
the old
as
man.
well. I forgot about it. Sorry to interrupt you, but I remember now exactly.
Yeah.
You know, what you're talking about has triggered my memory as well. And I remember, and yes, I mean, you used to make the most beautiful little buffalo and stuff, but I'm just interested to know how you knew how to use that stuff, because there's a bit of a tip for someone out there who's a sheep farmer or whatever, you know, and because it's like black clay, like, and very pliable.
Yes, yes. Oh, and just exactly the same as professional plasticine. But it's got a fine grit in it, a fine sand in it. It's almost as fine as dust, because dust collects. So it's got this beautiful texture. And I wouldn't mind getting my hands on some more of that stuff again. It's just not that sticky, you know, you need a bit of a tackiness to it. But other than that, it's absolutely stunning to work with. It's such a beautiful medium.
Wow.
And I don't remember how we figured it out. Someone found out that stuff, someone must have got it under their fingernail and rolled it into a little ball and went, oh, that stuff, yeah, why don't we make something out of that? How it came about might have been one of you bigger sisters who went, yeah, let's do this, or I can't remember.
Probably me. I'm sure it must have been me.
It must have been you. You're so clever. You're far too clever. Yeah, and then I went to school, and being an English boy in an Afrikaans school wasn't fun. You guys got the same deal, you know. It wasn't, you know, it was probably what is it, 70 years after the Anglo-Boer War. There was a lot of hatred still for the English, and I went to this all Afrikaans boarding school, and I got hammered for being English. So once again, I withdrew, you know, because I was being targeted by kids who didn't speak the same language as me. I could speak Afrikaans quite well, but purely because I was a Roy neck, a redneck, I wasn't welcome. So I got targeted for a long while, and then these boys realized that I'm the same as them. I can speak their language. I'm just as friendly. I can have just as much fun. And then that went away, you know, once they got to know me, but it wasn't fun in the first couple of months at school. So I think a lot of hardship results in a lot of, I suppose, creativity and a lot of good as well. So, you know, what doesn't kill fattens. So
it's wonderful, because you look at that, and, you know, as you're saying about Da Vinci as well, you know, it's oftentimes that hardship, that isolation, that being forced to look deep into yourself, then you find these creative juices. Now, some people will go on the negative side of that and go and want to sniff glue or whatever, you know, as sadly we often see in this country as well. Or they do what you did, you know, they go into themselves and they find that creative spirit. And I love that, because I think that is such a great message for people out there as well, especially at these times. You know, we've been forced to isolate, right? So we've been forced to look deep into our souls and our spirits right now, these past 2 years particularly. And I know for so many people, they've really pulled a rabbit or two out of the hat at this time. I know for a lot of people as well, it's been a really tough time. But this is really, to me, it just highlights how through pain and tragedy, I mean, it's like, you know, and in my story, when Hannes was killed in the hijacking, I mean, Hannes was my Austrian fiance, that was the thing that got me to do the work I do today. You know, it was that thing that made me look so deep and dig so deep and find God in such unusual places that I do what I do today. So I think what you're saying, it's a similar thing. You know, art is really a different form of creating yourself and expressing yourself creatively, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's no ways that you can be a great artist in this world and had it all peachy in your life. No ways. You can't.
Morne is a great artist too. You know, you do different styles of art, but he's also an incredible artist.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's our darkness, it's those things that we struggled with, that we digested and converted into some piece of art. So you can't be a great artist and have a peachy life all the time. So that is definitely necessary for a great artist to go through some dark moments in your life. Otherwise, you can't understand the shadow work of life, so to say.
Yeah, you're right. You have to delve into something in order to come out the other side. And you know, when you go through a tough time, you appreciate things. You really do appreciate the good. Even a simple thing like you know, you go for a run and you're struggling and you're really pushing through and you're finding it a bit hard. When you finish, there's an appreciation for having been through that and for actually now having the time and the ability to relax and enjoy yourself. And that's one of the simplest ways of describing that. But if you've got extended periods of hardship, you certainly become something. You should become something, and that's, I suppose, is what you've picked up on, Shanti, is pretty much what's happened with me. Is you know, I was institutionalized for a long time. I went to boarding school at the age of 6, like you did. People are aghast when they say, you went to boarding school at 6. I went, yeah, I never saw my mother all week. I saw on the weekends in the first 2 years. Yeah. But
it's a farm life, you know. We understood as kids that was the way that it was. Yeah,
it's true. And you know, I think that, so I'm trying to get back to your original your question about how this all came about. Then I went to boarding school, and then I, in addition to being English, I'm dyslexic. So that put me in another predicament with the teacher, where the teacher went, this kid is unteachable. Okay, let's either embarrass the kid and show the class how stupid he is, or let's put him in a corner and give him a lump of clay to play with. So that's what they did with me. Because the moment you embarrass me and you make me feel bad about myself, I'm not going to open up to you. I refused to work that entire first year of school. I just did nothing. I don't know how I got through it. Eventually, I stayed back for a year after the 3rd year. But basically, that was the most terrible. And she taught you as well, Mrs. Mackenzie. Horrible old thing. But I've got to thank her as well. You know, I've got to go back and I've got to look at, and this is the new me. I'm going, well, you can't have hatred for anyone, no matter what they've done, because they've given you a gift of some kind.
Totally.
You know, a simple thing like mental illness, like anxiety, which I'm prone to having. You got to look at it and say, well, you've come to me. There's a message for me now. Now I must deal with this, because that doesn't come to me for nothing. It's not there to really torment me. It's there to tell me that there's something wrong. Now deal with it. And that's, I suppose, the way when I look back on my past and on my wrongs, the wrongs that were done to me, I've got to pick out the stuff that was really good for me. And the creativity certainly was, because I was, you know, that solitude, chosen or unchosen, was what got me to where I am today. And I just found that I became more and more, I suppose, creative as I went along. I went through long periods of just being a mainstream kid, I suppose, from upper primary through to you know, being a young adult. I kind of lost my way in as a creative person, and then it slowly started coming back to me. And I you know, 20 years ago, I really started going hard again at producing artworks, and you know, people come into your life for the right reasons. And so yeah, I hope that's answered your question. You know, you just progress from one thing onto another, and then it just, opportunities come along, and you've got to grab those. And whether you're aware of them or not, they seem to come at the right time. And you also have to, at the same time, when you're getting opportunities and potential growth in your creativity for whatever reason, you could also have a lot of sidetrack, a lot of distractions. So one's got to, you know, I've learned to avoid distractions, you know, and it's taken me many years to realize that, I suppose, having wasted a lot of time, let's say, in inverted commas, I've also got to where I am now because I'm learning to be more focused, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So I hope that's led to where you kind of.
No, totally. It's just so interesting, you know. It's all, you know, like the path and your insight. I mean, you know, the way you look at it, and it's super interesting. So when did you get your first commission, and who was it?
Well, that's also family related. So it was a sort of a commission. So I was actually making money as a pre-teen, I suppose. As a young kid, I was making those guinea fowls, and I was doing leather work as well. So my cousins would buy, I remember selling a wallet for R1, which was like, in Australian dollars is 10 cents. So it's probably about
You
8
sold my
US
knife
dollars.
as well for R1. You
I sold
stole
your
my
knife
knife,
because
sold it.
my knife was in your tuck, your knife was in my tuck box, and I got offered money for it. I sold it. Yeah, so yeah, I think my first actual commission was my school principal, Mr. Chambers, who now lives in Australia. And he was an incredible teacher, and he wasn't a friendly guy. He wasn't and this is what I love about seeing the good in other people. He was strict, and we couldn't stand him as kids. Now I've realized how good he was for us. He realized I had a talent in leather work. So he said, we have got gymnasts, and we get these leather gloves that fit through the 2 middle fingers down the palm, protecting your hand, and then they strap around the back of your wrist. He says, these things are frightfully expensive. Wouldn't you like to make us some? And I went and did all my research. We ended up going to East London on one of the holidays, and we bought a whole lot of leather, and we bought some buckles. And the next term I came back to boarding school, there I was making these things. I just had one that I could copy, basically stenciled it out and made a whole set for the school. So that would have been my first actual commission. Whether they paid me or not, I can't remember, but I probably got a few rand for it, you know. But that was, I remember getting something for it. I can't remember what it was. Maybe didn't have to stay in the boarding house for longer than I needed to, or something. I can't remember. But yeah, I remember that being my first job as a creative person, kind of, let's say, officially. And then I'd make the guinea fowls and sell them, but they were kind of more just make and sell. But a commission, as in, can you make this for me, was the first one, really. So that was quite amazing. And he's actually, he follows me on Mr. Chambers, or Desmond follows me on my Facebook page, and we have some cool conversations. So I reminded him that he was my first client ever. So he was quite pleased about that.
That's so cool. Well, I recently, so I'm going to ask you, like, just on your journey, and I know you've spent time as well working, you lived in Dubai for a couple of years, and you had some very interesting commissions there and stuff like that. So maybe you can, what have been the highlights and the lowlights of where you're at, just in terms of your work, your art and stuff like that? Because you've really done some amazing stuff.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I know you've even done Ziggy. Is it Zygomatoris or Zygomasaurus?
Yeah, Zygomaturus trilobus is basically a giant wombat that grew to the size of a cow. So yeah, they were around the Margaret River region, and they were discovered. The remains were discovered in caves. So they asked me to recreate a whole series of all those we call megafauna over here. So the megafauna is a global term, but megafauna over here is basically your massive, large-sized, primarily marsupial, so pouched mammals. So they were pouched mammals, can you believe it? And they carried their young in pouches, but they were the size of cattle. So quite incredible. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, my older sister's ex-husband, Derek Noy Smith, is an incredible businessman, and he commissioned the first bronze sculpture. And that was, well, he encouraged the first pieces, and he obviously got a few out of it as well. So they were into their field trialing with pointers and gun dogs and all that sort of thing. So I started doing game birds and gun dog bronzes, and then developed it into the elephants. And you talked about the elephant yesterday. I did some wildlife pieces as well. Yeah, so some of the corporations in South Africa bought some of those pieces. One of the schools in Johannesburg, St. John's College, commissioned a rugby player, and that went to Francois Pienaar. So Francois Pienaar owns one of my sculptures as well, and he's the guy that won the first World Cup, if you guys don't know about that. So those who don't know anything about rugby, if you know about rugby, you'll know who Francois Pienaar is. So yes, I met him as well. So there was a nice few little stepping stones, and then into Dubai, that's where the big stuff started, really. So in Dubai, I went over to basically work for a business, and that didn't work out. So I then took the Cobb, I don't know if you guys know the Cobb grill, little dome cooker, fits in a canvas bag. It's great for camping and boating and all that sort of thing. That also is a South African invention. It's now global. So I was marketing that. All once again outdoor related stuff. So I love that. And then was doing the creative stuff on the side. So I was doing bronzes and all that. Met some incredible people. Did some work for a company called Theme World. So we did lots of artificial rocks and themed sort of environments, like water world type stuff, and a lot of private commissions for the sheikhs and I can't mention their names, but their families. So we do like a pond with I don't even know what you call them, horses with fish tails. They're like mermaid horses leaping over each other, and that was a fountain. And then that drained into a pond, and the koi in the pond were like $100,000 each. It's ridiculous. So there was a huge amount of interesting stuff I did there. And then the biggest job was for the, where the Khalifa Tower is now, the Khalifa Tower, the world's tallest building. That's got a hotel called the Address Hotel, and that burnt that New Year. Do you remember the fireworks that burnt down the hotel?
Yeah.
Probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was basically, they commissioned the series of sculptures that were up to 3.5 meters tall. I called it the Cycle of Life series. That was all about nature and about the cycle of life in the ocean, really. So they're all quite circular pieces and shapely pieces, all quite contemporary, because in the Middle East, realism is quite frowned upon, because in religion, you're not supposed to create lives as an artist. So they like the contemporary stuff. Especially in the public works, but it's kind of gone away now because there's lots and lots of horses and all sorts of things in Dubai now. So that's not as strict anymore. But yeah, that was probably the most interesting project I've worked on. Extremely challenging. The client wanted everything to perfection, like unbelievably perfection. If my pieces didn't match my smaller models, they were rejected straight away. It was probably the toughest job I've ever had to work on. They were extremely strict on, and I would say demanding on how things were done. And I suppose it's understandable. They were producing quality and they were paying good money for it. So I learned very quickly that you produce what you say you're going to produce, and you do it well. So my business knowledge as a visual artist has come from that. I very, very quickly learned that, the dope smoking artists lying in the backyard working when they feel like it just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It's not, if you want to make a living as an artist, you've got to be professional.
Absolutely.
So that's what I learned the hard way there. I suppose I applied myself, but just that last 5% just wasn't good enough for them. So I then very quickly learned that I had to produce high quality, on time, on budget. That's it. So now that's what I do. Even with the smaller projects over here, any project I produce on time, and I produce it to the quality that the client wants, no matter how small, even if it's a few $100s, because everyone talks, and that person who commissions something may be very influential and pass on that information. So for me, it's about my reputation as an artist, and I always try and produce the best quality I can. So yeah, that Dubai area you asked about is basically a big learning curve for me. It was probably, that project in Dubai was still the biggest project to date. In fact, that was a decade ago. I've done a lot more since then, but not as large single commissions. And those are, they highly demanding commissions, and I'd love to do more of them, but they probably break me as well. So I just like doing stuff that I really enjoy. I work fast now. I work to quality. I'm much more focused on the client, and obviously my subject choice and my medium is very, very important to me. So the story about each piece, where every piece comes from, mainly I would call a lot of my components vintage trash. So
what got you into that direction? Because in the recent years, I've noticed you've started creating some really cool art pieces from what was the word you used earlier on? What components?
yes, oh, I can't remember now, but yes, they're basically
using different components, and I would love to speak a little bit about that as well.
Basically recycled components, yes. So
so you take a lot of old trash like tins and what have you, and you make beautiful artwork. But also in recent years, you've been living in Australia, and I know you're working with children there, some of the First Nations children there. I know you've established an incredible relationship with some of the original elders there. So, you know, I see you just as going deeper and deeper into your spirit, and the deeper you go, the more beauty you actually create.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now you're talking about components. These are 2 little wings that are going to go on a tiny little bird. That's the body there. So those wings will go on that bird like that, basically like that. So I'll try and get you a silhouette. There it is there. So that'll become a little bird on a stand or on a wall-mounted piece. But that drum, that comes from an old oil drum, probably BP because it's green. It lay on the side of the road near where I live for about 4 years. And I drove past it every day going, I'm going to pick that drum up. It took me 4 years to pick it up.
Wow.
So now there's a story that I tell. When I produce an artwork, I've taken that drum away from the side of the road, which was an eyesore, and I've turned it into something I think, you know, will be beautiful to some people. So there's your wings for a bird, the fins for a fish or something, and I'm producing a number of different things out of that. So yeah, just a copper wire. Here's a piece of copper wire. That's normal electrical wire that I stripped the plastic off, and then the wire, that's going to be the bird's feet. So I'm going to burn that black with a flame. I'll darken it so it looks aged, and that'll sit on basically on the bird like that. So it'll hang back on the back of the bird like that. So lots of different things. I'm always trying to think out of the box. I'm always trying to think of how to turn my trash into treasure. Really, that's what it is. I love seeing the joy in people when I produce something that I know would have gone to landfill. I know would have got burnt in a fire. Beautiful piece of timber. I remember wrestling 2 of my friends to the ground for a piece of railway sleeper that they wanted to throw in a fire. I said, that's not going in the fire, my boys. I'm taking that and I'm making a sculpture from that. And they laughed at me. And I went and made, you know, $2,000 from that piece of timber of theirs. And it went to some ABC radio, one of the top presenters actually bought it at an exhibition. So, but I turned it into a sculpture. So there you go.
That's amazing.
That's Alan.
The story is crucial for me. The story, where everything comes from, and if I can remember the components, like the wire that'll hold this bird up, I've already earmarked that holds it up on the base. It sort of comes in from behind from an angle, and I'll lighten the color of the wire so the bird sits and you can see the bird sticking up. The wire comes from a farm that was established in 1856 near a place called Serpentine. So I just put a little label on everything. I try to remember most of it, but I put a little label on every little piece where it comes from. I used to work in the conservation department in the caves, and a lot of the timber that got removed, or the old handrails that got removed, have gone into making sculptures. I've even made a pub table and 4 stools from all the offcuts from the one cave. And that's going to go to one of my exhibitions coming up. So I like to do functional stuff as well. So yeah, It takes time to find your components. Is probably more time than actually making them. It's a huge job, but I try and do that as an integrated thing with other things. If I'm going for a walk on the beach with my kids, for example, and I find a piece of timber, I'll take that with me, and that'll become an artwork at some point. So for me, integration is a crucial thing. It really is important to me to live as a happy person. I think I have to intermingle my life, my professional life, and my life my personal life as well. So
you got to do what you love and love what you do.
It makes one. I just find it makes people happier. You know, when you are involving. And my kids, you know, my daughter's growing up now, so she's got less interested. But my son will come to the studio with me, and he will work for me basically. And he's only 11, but he'll do odd little jobs and he'll get paid for it. And he loves it. He loves
Listen,
knowing
I
what he's
bought
done.
your son's first work of art. It is the
Yes.
most, that was such a pleasure for me when Joshy made his first artwork. I had to buy it. I simply had to buy it. It's sitting in my office. It's at my desk. So I love it.
Oh, beautiful. It's and that series is called the Ugfish series. Now in Australia we have a boot called it's basically a sheepskin shoe, which is called an Ugg boot. So they're pretty ugly, and they're like, you know, if you're from the wrong side of the tracks, you'll wear Ugg boots to the shops. You know, it's just not acceptable, and some people just don't care, so they do. So it's like a high slipper really, and a lot of Aussies just wear them everywhere. They just love them. So yeah, I've coined that phrase, the Ugg fish. So they are a really ugly fish. Like I had a client,
like
one of
Crocs
my
or something.
exactly, one of the galleries. One of the galleries had an Ugg fish in their gallery, and she's got a client who buys almost every second or third sculpture from me. This man will buy, and she called him in and she said, "Look, I've got a beautiful piece of work. It's a fish. The body of the fish, which is a piece of like an old root or something, comes from one of the lakes near in their region. So it's got all the story to it." He walked in there. He says, "It's just too ugly. I just cannot own that." He said, "I'm sorry, but it's too ugly."
That's what makes it beautiful, I'm sure. But listen,
I think you're right.
You've also been living in Australia, and I know that you being a nature person that you are, you've made some beautiful connections with the Aboriginal people or the original people or the first people, First Nation people. And I know that you have a strong connection to the land. And I know it's also in Australia that you've actually started making this, this visual art, the stuff that you're doing now, which is beautiful. Tell me about the combination of all of that, the spirituality, the artwork, the people. What have you gained as an artist through deepening your spiritual connection with other people?
That also would have started when I was young. On our farm, the kids that I used to hang out with on the farm were the children of our dad's workers on the farm.
African kids, yeah. We all played with them. They were our friends.
But then in Beaufort West, we used to have so much fun with them. And when we moved to Beaufort West, that's the further west you go in South Africa, the more, I suppose you could say, in general, the more slight the people become, because the eastern side is lush. Therefore, your bigger tribes, your Bantu and Nguni tribes, they own that land traditionally. Okay, we're talking prior to settlement. And then the further west you go, the more mobile they are, and the more slight they are, and generally less warring, I suppose you could say. And the Sand people, the Bushmen, were pushed away by these tribes, and obviously when the settlers arrived, that they became hunted too. So the poor little Sand people were targeted by everyone, and their culture goes back. There's evidence in a cave near Mossel Bay where their beads and their little I suppose you could say their ornaments date back 190,000 years.
Yeah,
this is a long time.
Yeah.
So for them to get just discarded like that just makes me so upset. Anyway, so they've ended up in the Kalahari mainly now. That's where they're most recognized. But they've in the Western Cape, that's where they began. I suppose you could say became a mixed blood type person. But the further inland you go, like where we were, they're pretty much direct descendants of these Bushmen. But they just lived a modern life. They worked on farms. But they still had the knowledge. So I would learn from these young boys what berries to eat, for example. We used to go into the bush and eat a little berry that turned into which you chewed up into like chewing gum, and you could chew it for hours. It's called a nyam nyum. And then there was the other little ones. There was like a cluster of 4, and they were like a more sour, sweet, quite sour. But we would go and live on things in the bush and then come home not hungry. And my mother would say, why aren't you having your lunch? We go, well, we've eaten already. We've just gone and foraged. for hours on end. So yeah, so that connection with First Nation people, with old cultures, has always been so strong for me. I wasn't even aware of it until recently, where I've just really thought about it. And I've connected with some people in this region in the southwest of Australia, and they're basically Noongar people, and they're Aboriginals, of course, but they break up into if there's no chief, if they don't have chiefs, they're called language groups. So they are language groups. They have a very flat society where they have a, if someone's done something wrong, they have a meeting, and they, the kangaroo courts and all that sort of thing. I don't have a lot of knowledge on that, but so that's why they're referred to as language groups and not as tribes. But the knowledge of the bush and it's just superb. It's just beautiful. So I've been to quite a lot of cultural sort of events. I've sat with friends through my work, my other job, I suppose you could say. I work with young people who are disadvantaged, and the cultural advisors are just the most wonderful people. There's a guy who's a local artist too, who's very well known, and him and I would sit for hours and just talk about culture, and we go for drives with the young people and just go and have the most incredible day out and just learn about the culture. So I have been privy to that for a while now, and it's just quite amazing to be, I suppose it's a real privilege to be involved in that.
Absolutely.
What have I done wrong? I got barked at. I said something wrong, didn't I?
They agree.
Is that Biatch at you again?
What's that one? Does your dog bite? No, my dog does not bite. Woof, woof. What do you mean your dog doesn't bite? It's not my dog. Yeah, so I've always had this amazing connection and interest in cultures, even in the Middle East, and unfortunately I wasn't, that wasn't well received. I wasn't welcomed in because of stuff that's happened in the Middle East. So that you never get that closeness you'd have in other areas, like your First Nations in America. Those are incredible people. The Aboriginals over here are just wonderful people. So my knowledge of what I know about the cultures is just so deeply seated from when I was a kid, and I try and convey that. Probably a lot of it I'm not even aware of what I'm doing, but just conveying that knowledge of ancient cultures in my work is just incredible. I do a series of angelic pieces now, which are about culture, about strength, about individuality, and all things like that. So I think a lot of it comes from my interest in cultures. It's just, yeah. So I hope I've answered your question there. I'm just, yeah. I've got 1,000 things I want to say, and I'm just trying to narrow it down to answer your question.
Yeah. No, that really, really, really does. And I think what I'm going to say, because I think we have time for today, and I would love to chat with you again, and you could maybe share some more of your experiences. I think you've got a lot of creativity, knowledge to share around sustainability. I don't want to say conservation, that's not the right word.
Well, to some degree, yes, but certainly more about sustainability, more about respect, really. Respect, attitude are just so important. It starts with an attitude, and then it goes on to what you do with that attitude. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, also what I love is that, and I remember you as a little kid when you were dyslexic. Yes, my heart used to break, man. I tell you that, and as you say, with Mrs. Mackenzie as well, and I know you used to battle with your reading, and I remember that you weren't happy with Mrs. Mackenzie, but it's amazing what you're saying now, who is our grade 1 teacher. She taught all of us in our entire, she was there for every day, but I think, Alan, by the time you got her, she must have been around 90, so I'm not surprised that she was. Yeah, but the fact that she put you in the back of the class with a ball of clay. And, I remember we talk about that humiliation. I remember as a kid because I had a gift of seeing spirits and hearing things and what have you. I was 5 years old and I went to the hostel, and the kids
So
they
that's
used
a
to tell me
boarding
I was
house.
the devil's
For those
child.
that do, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, a hostel is a boarding house. Yeah.
Yeah, boarding house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was told I was the devil's child and Jesus hated me. I was the only kid in my standard in the hostel who was English, okay? And I remember sitting one day, and I remember the matron there. She made an example out of me the one day. After a supper in the evenings, we had to go to kinderkrans, which is like Bible study. We'd sit in this big lounge and she would read. And I don't know, I was talking to someone or doing something, but she made me stand up in front of them all and proceeded to tell everyone all the bad things about me and how ugly my dress was. I remember that, made a point of saying, this is an ugly dress, it belongs on the farm, and I shouldn't bring it to school ever again. I remember that humiliating me, and I remember my face going blood red. And I remember then running outside and sitting under the lemon tree, and I was crying. I was crying. And then I just remember this voice coming into my head and just saying, and I remember at that stage as well, I was seeing ghosts in the hostel, and I was saying, there's a ghost in the hostel. And then, of course, I was now supposedly making everyone scared. But of course, it took me a little while to realize what you say, because in our house, you know, that was normal. For us to see ghosts and talk about it, you know. And I just remember sitting there, and this voice said to me, and I know it was God's voice. God said to me, they don't understand you. You're different to them. So God showed me my gift in the formative years of my life, but it wasn't to be used then. So it gave me such a sense of peace that I then suddenly got peaceful. And suddenly I blocked off the things that was obviously making me unhappy and a target, as you say, because we see how many creative, different people are targeted because we're different, we have different language, you had dyslexia, whatever. But that has been such a big lesson for me, because and it was after Hannes's death that I reactivated my gift again, full on. It was Hannes's death that was the catalyst for me to do the work I do today and tap right back into those times and to be able to re-bring my gift to the world. Had it not been for Hannes dying, I would not be doing the work I'm doing today. That's for sure. You know? And had it not been for Dom passing away 2 years ago, I would not have been able to create the book for the Sun Kids children that we're teaching worldwide now. So everything in life has such a gift. So it's about really digging into those painful bits and understanding that we all have gifts. And I would love for you as an artist to come on again and we can talk about that, because I think where we're going right now, the world is turning into a very different place. We're losing this academics. We're losing this full-on intellectual bang, bang, bang. We've been taught creativity is weak. It doesn't earn you money. It's not good. It is the most exhilarating elixir for the soul. You would know that, tapping into your creative juices. So that's what makes us whole, amazing people. And I think where the world is going now, we're getting back to that. We're getting back to our ancient cultures, the ancient way of being, where we're sustaining ourselves, we're recycling things. We're going to have to reuse the crap that we've made and somehow integrate it and dissolve whatever. And I really love what you do, honestly. And I think you can be a teacher, a guide, mentor, whatever you want to call it, for so many people out there who feel like you have to be this successful person to be an artist. Your parents have to be rich, or you've got to starve if you're an artist. We've got to get out of that mindset. We really, really do. And I would love for you to share more of your tools with us and talk with us more about that, the sustainability, the using anything. You can recycle anything. You can create whatever it is, you know, and not just what you're visually seeing, but what you feel inside while
Yes.
you're creating, and the
Yes.
healing that occurs while you're creating. I mean, you're an amazing father. I mean, I must say, you and Harry, our brother, you guys are amazing dads, you know, and I must say your kids thrive through the fathers that you are. And I must say, I'm proud to be your sister when I see how my brothers treat their kids and their women. Absolutely. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the least we can do, I think, but it's also, you know, passing on lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I would love to come back on. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I do appreciate that. So, and I just want to share my knowledge. I want to share, and I'd love to get feedback from people too. I'd love to hear what they say, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear.
Learning from each other. It's always being open to discussion, to, you know, some of the most successful things I've done have come from being open and asking people to comment, to give their opinions. I'm always open to that. So yeah, I'm certainly ready for that interesting part of this you know, these discussions we're having. So yeah, engagement is critical. It's beautiful.
Would love that. So please, guys, if you guys have any questions, any comments, any feedback, we would love to sustain this channel as well, with Alan, my beautiful little baby brother. And I wish I could give you a little hug right now because you're so cute.
Oh, yeah. You know that
Look at him.
monoped, what's it? Hey,
Look at
Jonty,
him.
what's that monoped thing of yours? You don't never come across the ocean.
My uni wheel, I think Harry called
Yeah,
it my
uni wheel, the thing-
unidentified beach gliding object. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, guys, thank you so much. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And please, yeah, give us a like, a share, and a subscribe if you haven't already. And I'm so proud and so happy to introduce you to my baby brother today. And you're going to be seeing more of him. He's an amazing, just his essence inside and out, his art, his creativity. He's got a lot to teach and show the world. And I would love for him to use us as a platform to do that. So look forward to having you back out.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.